I never thought the road home would smell the same after all these years. That faint mix of rain, pine, and diesel fumes from the old gas station down the hill. 20 years, and yet every crack in the sidewalk still knew my footsteps. Only difference is, this time, I'm not walking home as the broken girl they threw out. I'm driving up in a black Mercedes, title papers in my purse, and a silence heavy enough to crush a lifetime of memories. My name's Evelyn Hart. 40 now. Business consultant, single mom, coffee addict, and someone who once slept 3 nights behind a diner because she had nowhere else to go. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, a dot on the map called Mason Creek. Population then? Maybe 6,000, counting the dogs. My dad was a mechanic. My mom ran the church choir and ruled the house with a Bible in one hand and gossip in the other. We weren't rich, but I thought we were solid. Faith, family, hard work, that's what they preached. Turns out, it was just a sermon for outside. Before I get into what really happened, tell me where you're listening from. I know stories like mine reach all kinds of hearts in all kinds of places. Drop it in the comments, and if you believe in karma as much as I do, hit subscribe. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's proof that life always circles back. I was 16 when my world cracked open. Junior year. Straight A student, choir soloist, the girl teachers pointed to when they said, "See, effort pays off." Then came Daniel Reed. You know the kind, smile that looks like rebellion wrapped in denim. He wasn't trouble, not really. Just the son of the new math teacher, with eyes too honest for his own good. We met at a church picnic. I spilled lemonade on his sneakers. He laughed and said, "Guess that's one way to make an impression." That was the first time in my life someone didn't look at me like a rulebook. We started meeting after school. Just small things, library corners, late evening walks. The kind of friendship that grows roots before you notice. But Mason Creek had rules. And my mom, she was the rulebook. When she caught us one evening, sitting too close under the bleachers, she didn't scream. She smiled that cold Sunday smile and said, "We'll talk at home." I wish she'd screamed. Because silence, in my house, always came before the storm. Inciting incident. 2 weeks later, my period was late. Stress, maybe. Exams, choir rehearsals. But to Mom, it was confirmation. She didn't ask this time. She just packed a bag and said, "You'll go stay with your Aunt Ruth until you remember what kind of girl you're supposed to be." Aunt Ruth lived 2 towns over. She wasn't cruel, just tired. She worked nights at a diner and believed kids were best seen, not heard. I tried to finish school from there. Tried to explain that I wasn't pregnant. Tried to get Daniel to write back. He never did. Later I learned Mom had intercepted the letters. Every single one. By winter, rumors had finished the job. In a small town, truth is whatever the loudest whisper decides it is. They said I ran away with Daniel. They said I was hiding a baby. They said I'd shamed my parents so badly, they pretended I never existed. And they were half right. Because one Sunday morning, the pastor announced the Hart family needed prayers for their lost daughter. I sat in Aunt Ruth's kitchen, staring at the radio, hearing my own name spoken like an obituary. That's when something in me broke, and rebuilt itself, harder. I left Mason Creek that summer. Took a bus north with $50 and one photograph. Me, Mom, Dad, and the dog we used to have. The picture bent where I kept folding it, trying to decide whether to throw it away. I didn't. Not because I still loved them, but because I needed the reminder. The city wasn't kind. I scrubbed tables, waited tables, slept in a shelter, then finally found work at a laundromat. The owner, Mrs. Carter, was the first person who didn't ask about my past. One night, she saw me reading a discarded college brochure and said, "You've got that look, like you already know there's more than this." She helped me fill out the GED forms. Let me use her address for the papers. When I passed, she baked me a pie and said, "See? Proof don't need permission." I cried that night, first time in years. From there, it was small steps. Community college. night shifts. A scholarship that felt like a miracle. I studied business management, mostly because numbers didn't judge. By 27, I was the youngest operations manager at a logistics firm I'd ever worked for. I'd built a life from scratch, brick by bloody brick. And I told myself I'd never look back. But karma has its own calendar. One Tuesday morning, my assistant dropped a file on my desk. New potential client, Hart Automotive Repair, Mason Creek. My father's garage. Still running. Still under his name. The logo hit me like a ghost. Same Renchanwing symbol he'd painted on the sign when I was a kid. I could have rejected the client. Could have handed it to another consultant. But I didn't. Instead, I called the number listed. A woman answered. Her voice was tired. Hart Automotive. It was my mother. The next morning, I parked across from the garage, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't nervous. I was alert. Focused. Patient. 20 years of silence, of being erased, of scraping by, had taught me one thing: patience is a weapon. I walked in like any professional consultant. Dad looked up from the workbench, his hands greasy, his eyes squinting. Can I help you, ma'am? I forced my voice calm. Evelyn Carter. I'm here regarding your financial review. Mom appeared from the back office, a folder clutched in her hands. Her eyes widened the moment she saw me. Recognition flickered. Then pride. Then denial. She straightened her shoulders, hiding every trace of fear. You're the consultant? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I said. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted. They needed me. Later that day, as I left the garage to grab a coffee, I ran into someone familiar. Evie? It was Daniel Reed. Taller now, shoulders broader, eyes still honest. I thought you were gone for good. I was, I said quietly. Guess life had other plans. We sat in the small cafe, the same booth I remembered from years ago. He explained what he'd learned, the letter, the lie, the way my mother had forged my handwriting to convince him I'd left him. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. She stole our lives, I whispered. Daniel nodded. And I believed her. I didn't know how to fight an adult. That night, I sat in my motel room. Every memory, every stolen year, every humiliation, stacked like stones in my chest. I began to plan. Not out of rage, but out of justice. If I was going to help them with the business, I'd do it, on my terms. Every loan, every signature, every document would pass through my hands. And when the time was right, the truth about the forged letter would come out. Publicly. Unavoidably. The next day, I returned under the guise of auditing their finances. I asked Dad to show me the spreadsheets. I asked Mom to give me access to the bank statements. They complied. The same hands that had tried to destroy me were now trusting me. Every misplaced invoice, every unpaid tax, every debt, they revealed themselves like little confessions. And I stored them, mentally and on paper. Each one another step toward karma. Mom tried to corner me privately. Evelyn, you know we've had it rough. We didn't mean. I know, I said softly. But my voice held steel. And that's why you'll do exactly what I ask. No more lies. No more hiding. She faltered. Pride, the same pride that forced her to forge the letter, clashed with fear. I smiled gently. We're going to rebuild this garage together. And you're going to thank me for it, eventually. Daniel became my ally. Not just emotionally, but practically. He helped me understand which suppliers were manipulating the hearts, which debts were fraudulent, and which business opportunities had been lost. We worked late nights, mapping every vulnerability in the garage's finances. Every time Mom or Dad bragged or underestimated me, I filed it mentally. Every word, every gesture, it was all ammunition. 2 weeks in, I had everything. The forged letter, the intercepted correspondence, bank records showing Mom's unilateral advice to mislead Daniel's parents. Everything. One evening, I placed the letter on the desk, opened the blinds so the streetlights hit it, and said, "Mom, do you remember this?" Her eyes widened. That's. You forged it," I said, voice even. "You made Daniel believe I had abandoned him. You stole 20 years of his life, and mine." Her hands shook, the kind of trembling I had once felt when I was a child, powerless. Dad stayed silent. His jaw clenched. I didn't need to say more. The evidence spoke. I realized then, revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. It's about making people face the truth they tried to bury. And they were facing it now. That night, I didn't just sleep. I planned the next moves. The public exposure. The final humiliation. Everything had to be flawless. Every signature, every contract, every small detail would be my final message. You can erase me from your life. You can try to break me. But you will never erase the truth. The next morning, I walked into Hart Automotive with purpose. Every step on the cracked concrete floor felt like reclaiming a piece of my stolen life. Dad greeted me with the same cautious smile he always wore these days, while Mom hovered near the desk, pretending to be busy with papers. "Morning, Miss Carter," Dad said. "I've already printed out last month's reports. Thought it might help." I nodded, scanning the numbers. There were mistakes, hundreds of small errors, overlooked bills, unpaid invoices. "These numbers need to be reconciled immediately," I said. "We can't go to the bank like this." Mom tried to interject. "We've been doing fine." I cut her off, gentle but firm. "We've been surviving. There's a difference." Over the next few weeks, I implemented changes. Contacted old suppliers personally, correcting past misunderstandings. Streamlined bookkeeping, catching fraudulent charges Mom had approved. Reached out to long-lost clients who had abandoned the garage under mismanagement. Every move increased my control, and their dependence. The more I fixed, the more they relied on me. Every handshake, every ledger entry, every signed paper drew them deeper into my orbit. Daniel and I worked side by side, the air between us thick with unspoken history. We laughed occasionally, shared memories, and, slowly, the tension eased. He didn't push, but I felt him watching, waiting, silently supporting. He had seen me grow, seen my strength, and he was drawn to it still. "You've changed the place in 2 weeks," Daniel said quietly one evening. "It's impressive." I smiled, a mixture of pride and quiet warning. This is only the beginning. They're going to learn just how much they lost when they erased me. Mom started asking questions, her confident mask slipping. "Do we really need to hire an accountant for everything? Why are you contacting these clients directly?" I answered carefully, always professional, but her eyes betrayed the fear I wanted her to feel. Every question, every suspicion, made her smaller in the chair across from me. And every mistake she made now, every lie she had told, was catalogued quietly. One Friday, I invited a few local journalists to cover a community event the garage was sponsoring. I made sure Mom and Dad were in the background, looking proud. I was the one handing the ceremonial check, shaking hands, and giving interviews. The press loved it. Quotes of me saving the struggling family business were everywhere. By the end of the month, I had rebuilt the garage's client base, corrected all internal mismanagement, positioned myself as the indispensable consultant. Mom and Dad didn't realize yet that their future depended entirely on me. And soon, the world would see the truth about the forged letter that had stolen 2 decades from me. I whispered to myself as I locked the office that night. The real lesson is patience. Let them believe they're in charge. Let them feel safe. And then, let karma speak. It was a Monday morning when I decided the time for subtlety was ending. Mom and Dad still didn't know the full extent of my awareness. They were walking around the garage like they were in charge, blissfully unaware that their daughter, the girl they had thrown out, now held the strings. I called a staff meeting. Everyone from mechanics to office clerks gathered, glancing at me curiously. "I want to talk about transparency," I said, my voice calm. "From now on, all decisions, all communications, everything has to go through me. No exceptions. There were murmurs, but no one protested. Mom glared at me. "That's unnecessary," she said. I smiled, softly, without mercy. Unnecessary? Or overdue? Every word landed like a hammer on years of arrogance. I had Daniel scan the old letters, emails, and financial papers. I had copies made. Everything hidden for 20 years was now organized, chronological, and undeniable. Then I began a quiet campaign. I contacted old suppliers Mom had misled. I reached out to local clients who had abandoned the garage. I highlighted successes that were clearly mine in community newsletters and online business profiles. Mom noticed immediately. Her questions became sharper, more desperate. Who told them about the new repair program? Why are our clients calling us about changes? Every question revealed her fear. Every answer I gave reinforced my control. One night, Daniel and I sat in my temporary office, plotting. "We need something they can't deny," he said. "Something public. Irrefutable." I nodded. The forged letter. The intercepted correspondence. The financial manipulation. Everything they've hidden for decades will go live at the right moment. He hesitated. "It's going to humiliate them." I met his eyes. "Yes. But it's justice. 20 years of stolen life deserve proof." We smiled at each other, silent understanding passing between us. I invited a small group of local business owners and journalists to a meeting, ostensibly to discuss partnerships and community support. Mom and Dad attended, oblivious to my plan. I handled the presentation. Numbers, charts, and success stories. I highlighted growth, improvement, and outreach. I mentioned suppliers who had been neglected, and who had suffered because of past mismanagement. Mom's face went pale. "Evelyn, what are you?" I smiled, letting the suspense hang in the air. No one else noticed. Everyone else saw a competent, impressive consultant saving a failing business. Mom realized the truth alone, and that was enough to shake her. Back in the office, I began issuing subtle instructions that exposed her incompetence without saying a word. "Mom, please review these statements carefully. Double-check the client histories. I've noticed some discrepancies." Her fingers shook as she went through the documents. Every error I had planted, every mismanaged detail, revealed itself in her hands. And every time she looked up at me, there was recognition, a mixture of fear and awe. I whispered to Daniel later. "Patience is everything. The moment she feels powerless, the trap is set." One evening, after the garage closed, I called Mom into my office. "Do you remember the letter you sent to Daniel?" I asked softly. Her face paled. "I don't know what you mean," she stammered. "The one that said I abandoned him," I said, pulling the folded paper from my file. Her hands trembled. "That was necessary. He had to believe." "Necessary?" I interrupted. "You lied. You destroyed 2 lives. You stole 20 years from me and from him. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" Tears welled in her eyes. Fear. Shame. The pride she had held onto for decades was crumbling. I realized then, revenge isn't just taking power. It's showing people exactly what they did, and making them live with it. It's letting them feel the helplessness they inflicted on you. Mom's trembling hands, Dad's silent guilt, Daniel's cautious admiration, all pieces of a puzzle I had been building for 20 years. And now the picture was complete. By the end of the week, I had secured control over every financial and operational aspect of the garage. Ensured Mom and Dad were completely dependent on me. Collected undeniable proof of their lies, deceit, and manipulation. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the town. The world will see the truth. And for once, it will be my turn to watch. The day finally arrived. I had scheduled a town hall meeting under the pretense of a business seminar, how small businesses can survive and thrive. Everyone expected an inspirational story about a struggling garage. No one expected the truth. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, smiling nervously. Daniel was by my side, calm, supportive, watching the room. Thank you all for coming, I began, voice steady, clear. Today, I want to talk about honesty, transparency, and the importance of trust in business, and in life. The audience leaned forward, expecting a motivational speech. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. What I'm about to show you involves 20 years of deception, stolen trust, and hidden lies. And it starts with a letter. The letter reveal. I unfolded the yellowed paper Mom had forged. The room was silent. Everyone could see it. This letter was sent to Daniel Reed when we were 16, I explained, holding it up. It claimed I had abandoned him, that I was pregnant, and that I didn't care about him. I didn't write it. My mother did. Gasps spread through the audience. Mom's hands flew to her mouth. Dad sat frozen, eyes wide. This lie, I continued, ruined not only my life but Daniel's as well. 20 years of lost time, lost love, lost trust, all because one person wanted control over what she thought was right. I showed the intercepted emails, the falsified documents, the evidence of financial mismanagement. I explained, calmly, how I had rebuilt the garage, repaired supplier relationships, and resurrected the business that my parents had almost destroyed. Every eye in the room widened as the full story became clear. Mom's face was pale, trembling. Dad looked like a man realizing the foundation of his entire family had been built on lies. I looked at them, voice gentle but firm. You can't undo what you did. You can't take back 20 years. But you can finally face the truth. It wasn't hatred that fueled me in that moment. It was justice. It was patience paying off. It was knowing that the truth has a voice louder than any lie. Mom tried to speak, to explain, to apologize. But I shook my head. No. There's nothing to say. Just accept it. Feel it. And she did. The garage thrived under my control. Suppliers and clients respected my authority. The community saw me as the one who saved Hart Automotive, not because I forgave, but because I rebuilt. Mom and Dad. They were humbled. They apologized privately, every day, quietly. They were learning what it meant to be powerless after years of holding power over me. Daniel and I, we finally found each other again. Not as the teenagers we were, but as two adults who understood pain, patience, and the beauty of vindication. That I walked into the garage one quiet evening, the sun setting behind Mason Creek. The smell of oil, metal, and pine reminded me of my past. But now, for the first time, it also reminded me of victory. Revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about balance. It's about letting life settle the score when others try to steal your years, your love, your trust. I smiled softly. And balance has been restored. That it was early morning when I stepped into Hart Automotive, sunlight streaming through the garage windows. The air smelled of motor oil, freshly brewed coffee, and possibility. I paused for a moment, just listening. The hum of machinery, the chatter of employees, the occasional honk outside, it all felt right. 20 years ago, this place had been a battlefield I never wanted to return to. Today, it felt like home. Daniel was already at his desk, reviewing supplier contracts. He looked up and smiled. Morning, Evie. Morning, I replied. For a moment, neither of us said anything. No awkwardness, no old pain, just understanding, like two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. We've come a long way, he said quietly. I nodded. And we're just getting started. Mom and Dad approached me hesitantly. Mom's hands were folded, her eyes downcast. Evelyn. We've done so much wrong, she whispered. I studied her. For years, I had imagined this moment, replaying it 1,000 ways. But I didn't speak immediately. I just let her feel the weight of her actions. Finally, I said. Yes, you did. And you need to live with that. But I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to live my life. Dad nodded, voice thick. We're proud of what you've built. We hope you can forgive us someday. We'll see, I said with a small, soft smile. Forgiveness isn't instant. It's a journey. But they would earn it. Slowly, like everything else, the business thrived under my leadership. Clients returned. Suppliers trusted us again. Mom and Dad worked quietly, now aware that their past could never control the present. Employees admired the new energy in the garage. I had transformed a place that once represented betrayal into a hub of honesty, competence, and respect. And every day, I reminded myself quietly. I didn't just survive. I thrived. That evening, Daniel and I walked out to the parking lot. The sun was setting behind the hills of Mason Creek, painting the sky in gold and crimson. You really did it, Evie, he said, his hand brushing against mine. No, I replied softly. We did it. Together. We stood there, side by side, finally free from the ghosts of the past. For the first time in 20 years, I felt whole. Revenge had given me closure. Karma had spoken. And I had reclaimed my life. Life isn't about holding grudges forever. It's about patience, strategy, and knowing when to let the truth shine. If this story inspired you, remember, no one can steal your future forever. Comment where you're watching from. Share it with someone who needs hope. And always remember, what's meant to be, always finds its way.